It's time for this week's episode of Brandon's Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon's Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon's Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Florida State Trademark and Licensing person, Kate Pugh. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in working in college athletics?
Yeah, so I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, home of Florida State, in the 90s when Coach Bowden was leading our football team and winning national championships, and grew up going to football games and baseball games and basketball games, and just always loved Florida State and college athletics. I think it's really special. And so I ended up studying sport management in college. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Thought maybe I would go over into the world of the Olympics. But yeah, just always, again, gravitated back towards college athletics, and obviously Florida State, being born and raised in Tallahassee.
Of course, what was that like, obviously being born and raised in Tallahassee and then getting to work for your school that you grew up watching?
Yeah, it's really been a dream. And it's fun to see now the inner workings of college athletics. It's obviously a lot harder being invested in it on a daily basis and not just being a fan. But in my role, it's really special to sort of protect the brand, and then also just growing up as a fan of Florida State's, really being invested in knowing what it's like to be a Florida State fan, and making sure that we create product that meets our fans' needs.
Of course, did you always know that you wanted to be on the trademark and licensing side?
No, so when I studied sport management at Florida State, I had no idea that this world existed. Once I graduated from Florida State, I moved to Atlanta and got a job with the Boy Scouts doing special events. It was back when the recession was heading in 2008, or really right before it, or 2007. And my job at the Boy Scouts, I met somebody whose husband worked for CLC, the Collegiate Licensing Company, who's the agency for a lot of universities. And I interviewed for a job with CLC, didn't even really know what the job meant or what it entailed, and got the job. And that was back in 2008. And I've been in licensing since then. So it's a fascinating world. It's really, really niche. There's only typically only one or two licensing folks on every campus. And then, obviously we have a lot of partners that produce our product, and retail partners. So it's, like I said, it's a very small industry that really you have no idea about until you're in it.
How's it like, obviously working with the CLC?
Yeah, so they're the licensing agency for hundreds of universities throughout the country. They really help facilitate the licensing process on our behalf. And they do a great job helping us with marketing, protecting our trademarks, collecting royalty payments. They have over 100 staff members. And so again, we only have 2 people here at Florida State that focus on trademark licensing. So really we have 100 people, or not 100 people, but dozens of other people that work at CLC that are helping us, again, protect our marks, market our marks, create product, collect the royalties. I joke sometimes they do all the dirty work for us, and managing and helping us manage our brand.
What was it like, ours being a coordinator and then switching over to the licensing side?
Yep. So when I worked at CLC, I started as an apparel coordinator. I was working with licensees like Nike, a lot of big companies, and some small companies as well, really being their day-to-day contact. I also reviewed artwork for these licensees. So what happened was all of our licensees submit artwork to us of the designs that they want to produce. And then the school has to approve it before it goes into production. So back when I worked at CLC would review the artwork. And so that was me in a lot of cases, reviewing artwork, making sure it was correct, things were spelled properly. And then we would pass it along to the schools. So I was really focused on a sort of account management side of apparel partnerships. And then I had the opportunity to move over to operations, which was a much more like internal role. I wasn't really working with too many external entities, whether it was the schools or licensees, but really helping the licensing process flow internally at CLC.
What was that like transitioning from CLC to going back to your alma mater to work at your alma mater?
Yeah, so again, it was sort of my dream job. I loved Atlanta, but always wanted to move back to Tallahassee, and had the opportunity back in 2016. It was a little surreal at first. Sometimes it still is. My office is in our football stadium, so it's funny going to work every day in the football stadium that I grew up going to games in. But you know, this side on the school side versus the agency side is very different. It's very hard. You know, we deal with student requests, internal staff requests. Spend a lot of time with the athletics department, you know, university communications, like, so there's a lot of internal needs. And then there's also external needs working with our licensees. We have around 350 licensees that produce product on behalf of Florida State. But then also retail partners, they're the ones that are selling the product for the university. So I thought I was prepared for making the switch over to Florida State. I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was, but we're in a good place now, 6 years in, where I feel like I'm finally getting the hang of being on the university side.
Of course, what were some of the similarities that you did before, obviously, the NIL passed, and what are some of the things that you do now that the NIL passed?
Yeah, so NIL, it's interesting. People are like, why are licensing directors dealing with name, image, likeness? And it's because things like the video game, EA's video game that they're bringing back hopefully next summer, that will most likely include student athletes in the video game, just like they are in Madden, the NFL game, but jerseys, trading cards, products, so consumer products that have the images of the student athlete plus university mark. So a lot of my time is spent figuring out policies and procedures for when student athletes want or could use university marks within NIL. Again, it's a lot on the merchandise side, but it could also carry over to corporate partners that are partners of our athletic department, that want to, you know, partner with our athletes for advertising and different partnerships. So a lot, you know, we're just a year into NIL, and a lot of my time over the past year has really, again, been spent developing policies and procedures, but then educating our student athletes on the opportunities that they have to co-brand with the university on merchandise.
Of course, with the EA game coming out, what are some of the things that you've helped with EA doing to market, obviously, Florida State?
Yeah, so we aren't in a position to market it yet. EA is really developing the game right now. Again, it's been nearly 10 years since they last had a game. So they're having to, and technology has changed. And so has university stadiums and logos and uniforms. So they're really working on building everything out, or rebuilding everything out. And so, you know, we had to submit thousands of images of our football stadium for them to rebuild in the game. You know, information about the music that's played within the game, like the fight song, different music, you know, that, or songs that may be played by the band when the team gets a first down or a touchdown. You know, we're working with them. We're going to have to submit to them the actual samples or actual jerseys the football team wears, so they can scan them in and build them into the video game. For Florida State, they're going to build in Osceola and Renegade, you know, the horse and rider that plants the spear before every home game. They, you know, want us to send really close-up images of Osceola's regalia that he wears. So it's a fun project, but it's a very, very detailed and slow project because there's so much that's incorporated into the game. And again, they're hoping to release it next summer.
What are some of your roles and traditions that you have for trademark and licensing as a director?
Yeah, so our responsibility is first to protect the university's brand. We do that by, again, making sure that all the licensed product that's produced bearing marks and verbiage and imagery of the university is submitted to our office for approval, so we can review it and obviously make comments if we need to. So that's easy. Again, like CLC really helps us in that process. Any vendor that we're licensed or that's licensed with Florida State submits that to us before they begin production. But it's also protecting the university's brand from infringement. And obviously that happens a lot online these days. And some of it is people just don't know. Obviously there's a lot of individuals now that have screen printing businesses or are hand making products. So it's reaching out to them and educating them on what university licensing is and the role that our department plays. But then there's obviously other infringement that happens, like last year when Coach Bowden passed away. We saw a lot of infringement in the marketplace. A lot of it happened overseas, where these companies saw a lot of the chatter happening on social media and are very sophisticated and are trying to take advantage of any opportunity to sell t-shirts. And this doesn't just happen in the college space. This happens with entertainment brands like Disney, NFL. All brands are obviously combating infringement. So again, one area of focus is really protecting the university and its brand, making sure, again, that the product is approved, that things are spelled correctly, like Tallahassee or Seminoles, that our colors are being used correctly, but then also helping stop some of the unlicensed product, because all the product that's sold, that's licensed, royalties are generated and given back to the university. And at Florida State, we invest a lot of those royalties into facilities. Other schools invest it in scholarships. It just depends on every campus. But so again, protection of the university's brand, profiting off the use of the marks, marketing the university's brand via licensed product. I tell people all the time that licensed product is probably the largest touch point that a university has with its fan base. It's so accessible. You can go to Walmart and buy, something, or you can go, buy something really high end from the bookstore. There's, product that's at multiple price points for everybody. And, again, making sure that everybody has access to buying what they want so that they can support the university.
Of course, what is that process like, as you said, with the infringement? And let's say somebody overseas is selling something Florida State. What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's difficult. We have our general counsel's office at Florida State helps out. CLC has a legal office that helps out. We subscribe to a software that scans the internet for unlicensed product and works to remove it off platforms like social media. A lot of it, you'll see social media ads. And so it's, there's a lot of different layers. We also have an outside counsel that helps us as well. And so depending on the issue, one of those groups will help us in taking it down. But it's very interesting because, again, a lot of the product and ads that people are seeing online for what looks like something that the university has licensed, or maybe it doesn't because of what's in the design, a lot of it is coming from overseas. And it's not just happening from Asia, but we've seen it from like Iceland as well, which has been really interesting. So again, it's not an easy task. If it's on a platform like Amazon or Facebook, then we report it to the platform and they help us remove it. But it's sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. Once you remove something, so if something else pops up around, so it's difficult to manage.
Of course, what is that process like, helping those college athletes brand themselves and make a name for themselves?
Yeah, so it's difficult, right? So there's not an overarching law right now or NCAA guideline about NIL. It really goes back to, if you have a state law or if you don't have a state law. So for the state of Florida, we have a law, but it says in our law that university employees cannot cause compensation. So I can't broker deals for our student athletes, but again, I can help educate them on specifically licensed product opportunities that may present themselves. So there's going to be this fall, we're a Nike school, and Fanatics is a partner of ours. They manage our team store, shop.seminoles.com. They're doing custom jerseys. So there'll be Nike jerseys with player name and number on the back, and the student athletes that opted in to that program, friends, family, and fans will be able to buy jerseys with their name and number, and the student athlete will also receive compensation for those jerseys. So that's been really fun to meet with our football team and talk to them about that opportunity and tell them, like, listen, this is you are the first team that has this opportunity to sell jerseys, or to see even your friends and family wear somewhat authentic replica jerseys. It's their jerseys are going to look like they look on the football field, and your friends and family and fans are able to buy them. So again, those are the types of opportunities that I'm really focused in on, is letting our student athletes know, what they can do in terms of merchandise, and when university marks can be approved. And there's a lot of natural categories like jerseys and the video game and trading cards. But we've had a local retailer that carried replica like t-shirt jerseys for a couple of our softball players this past spring, and they said those players were so appreciative and loved seeing fans, and specifically little girls, go to the game and wear t-shirts with their name and number on it, and just how special that was. So it's really, it's exciting to see that in this space.
Of course, what is that process like for on the college level, getting the authorization to have their names on those jerseys that you sell in the student stores instead of just having the number 1 on it?
Yeah, so the player has to give consent to have their name and number on the product. And so some of that is happening via group licensing. There's a couple of different companies out there that help with that process. Like for softball, the retailer in Tallahassee worked directly with the student athletes and had, an agreement. It wasn't anything complicated, but just talked about, like, the player sign giving the retailer the authorization to put together the program, and then, have the terms of the agreement, and, what the compensation would be for the student athlete. But again, unfortunately, I can't broker those deals for our student athletes because of our state law. I just need to make sure, when we see those opportunities come through our side, because we have to sign off on it, because our marks are used in some of these opportunities. We just make sure that the licensee, the vendor, has the rights secured with that player, and that the player has signed off on it as well.
Of course, in this trademark and licensing side, do you have where former players can still sell their jerseys, such as Jameis Winston could still sell his jersey?
Yep. So it's interesting you asked that question. I actually have a player that I idolized as a kid, worked on. We're working on re-releasing his jerseys, and a couple other players. We also Nike does some programs with players that are in the NFL. They don't do it for all players, but there are a few players. Jameis has been a part of the program in the past. Dalvin Cook has been a part of the program, where you can go on to, again, shop.seminoles.com and look under jerseys, and it's a jersey. So it's a Dalvin Cook jersey from when he attended Florida State. So it has his name and number on it. He's receiving compensation as well. So yeah, it does happen in the alumni space also.
What is that like, obviously having those alumni obviously have their jerseys sold alongside the current players?
Yeah, so we haven't seen the current players haven't really, for us, haven't had their jerseys launched yet. But I think it just, again, it's our fans. It's something that our fans are going to want. There's players that have made an impact to the history of Florida State football, like Charlie Ward and York Dunn and Derek Brooks. And then there's players that when we retire their jerseys, like Peter Warwick, that will make available jerseys and t-shirts and products for our fans to buy to celebrate that player. So again, it's just another touch point with our fans, giving them product that they want and they want to celebrate these key figures, and then again allowing these players to celebrate their history with Florida State and receive a little bit of compensation from it as well.
What are some of your future plans with Florida State and the trademark and licensing now that the NIL passed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it all depends on the future. And we're all a little uncertain about what the future is going to look like with NIL. If our state law changes, then we'll be able to be a little more proactive, maybe with what we do with licensing and specifically group licensing. I think it's difficult because this is still so new, and it takes a long time for product to be produced. But then also our licensees and our partners that are producing this product, they're sort of at a loss of, how this is going to work and what type of investment they need to make in this space. So I tell our student athletes when I'm meeting with them, like specifically our underclassmen, there's going to be a lot more opportunities when you're a junior and senior than today, just trying to, onboard these different programs. I know, there's been discussion about doing t-shirt jersey programs for a number of sports. Again, we really want to make sure that as many of our student athletes have the opportunity to opt into these programs, and that their friends and family and fans have the opportunity to buy gear that has their name and number on it. So I hope that, a couple years from now, you'll be able to go on to, our bookstore's website or Garnet and Gold or shop.seminoles.com, and you'll be able to find a lot of different options representing a lot of our different teams, both men's teams and women's teams, and obviously the football team, but also Olympic sports. But again, it's just going to take time for those programs to develop.
Of course, what are some of the things that you would tell a freshman getting through this process versus what you would tell a senior?
Yeah, I think I would tell everybody the same thing. Again, the difference is the freshman's going to probably have a little more opportunity for co-branding on product versus senior. I think what's different with licensing is these players are going to get a royalty off the sale of the merchandise. And they sort of have to opt into the program and know that they may make $100 or they may make $1,000, but it's all based on them promoting the product, but then the retailers buying and the fans buying into the product as well. So it's a little different than brand partnerships where there's a flat fee for a partnership, whether it's a softball player's getting $1,500 to make a post on social media. This is all based on a royalty and a sale of product. So the rates are sort of set, so it's hard for the student athlete to negotiate that in terms of rate, but what they can really do is promote the product and be a partner with the retailer and or the licensee in the development of the product to make sure it sells well.
Of course, with trademark and licensing, what are some of the things that you've helped, let's say, those sports such as volleyball that maybe not get as much media coverage as, let's say, your men's basketball, volleyball, and football?
Yeah, what I do is all product based. So it's making sure that our fans and those teams are represented, or I should say the teams are represented on the product that's produced. And so making sure, I worked with our softball program this past spring. They wanted to see more softball product in the marketplace. And so I, pitched it to Dick's Sporting Goods and other retailers and said, our softball program has had an incredible history, specifically over the past 5 years. They've won a national championship. They were runners up in 21. Last season they were a top 10 team, like giving them, our softball program is the most followed program on social media behind football, like giving our retailers the facts as to why this request makes sense and why we need to have more softball product in the marketplace. And our retailers listened and brought in more softball product, and it sold really well. And so now they've made a commitment to continue to bring in more product. Volleyball, there was a request this week from a coach with wanting, the bookstore on campus to set up and sell volleyball product during matches. And so it's again making sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure that all of the teams are represented on licensed product, so that these young fans and then also friends and family have the ability to support these teams.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know before working in branding and trademark and licensing?
Everything. I mean, again, I had no idea that this was a thing when I was a young girl going to our fan shop, buying a lot of Florida State gear, or even as a college student studying sport management. I don't even remember talking about trademarks and licensing. I think maybe that topic is covered a little more now versus when I was a student. But it's a whole nother world that people don't have the background on or just the knowledge on in most cases, because it is so niche. But it's really, really fun. It's constantly evolving. Especially now with NIL, it's just adding another layer into the mix. So yeah, I don't have a specific example because again, I had no idea that this was an opportunity for me to develop a career until it sort of landed on my lap.
What advice would you give people looking to get inside college athletics and work on the trademark and licensing and branding side?
Yeah, so I think in order to be successful in this space, you need to be really good at developing relationships because there's so many different people that you touch internally on campus or externally with licensees and retailers. And so, you need to be good at developing relationships. You need to have patience because a lot's going to come at you. And people also just don't understand this business. I think licensing is a good opportunity in college athletics for people who really want a good work-life balance. We're really fortunate in that, college athletics can be incredibly demanding, and licensing directors do have a lot on their plate. But we're fortunate in that we don't have a lot of the event and game responsibilities that a lot of our counterparts in athletics have to spend a lot of time, outside of traditional office hours. So that's definitely a good benefit. But again, it's demanding. It's challenging in the fact that no one really else understands what you do on campus and your responsibilities. But again, it's fun, especially if you're a fan or alumni of the school that you work for. It's just really rewarding.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media, along with Florida State Trademark and Licensing?
Yeah, I'm not super active on social media. Our trademark pages are at FSU Trademarks on all platforms. We try and do a good job posting things, but ultimately we rely on a lot of our retail partners to promote the product. So yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you again, Kate Pludge, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with the Florida State.
Thank you very much.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Kate, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you, Brandon.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.